This video is going to focus on receding forms in perspective. I'm sure we've all been in the situation where we're viewing something in perspective, in terms of this case, a 1-point perspective. So it might be looking down an avenue of trees, down a road, railway line, or in this case, on a pier on a lake, at a lakeside. So this is a 1-point perspective view as it recedes back to that vanishing point in the center there. And so this video is going to be focusing on how to determine objects that are equally set out, how to arrange them in perspective. So we know that these piers are equally set, but we can see that the distance between each pier is decreasing as that perspective view is taking, the perspective method's taking play. So for this video, we're going to be drawing this, so another pier, lakeside or oceanside, and so we can see it's vanishing off to that 1-point vanishing point, and the piers are decreasing, the boards are also decreasing, but primarily we're going to be focusing on the lampposts and how they're decreasing in spacing between each one. What you'll need is a piece of paper. This is just A3. You'll need a sharp grey lead, a ruler that's at least going to cover the whole page. So a 300 millimeter ruler might not be the best. I've also got a 450 here, so that's going to be much more useful. A fine liner, just to fine line the final design, and an eraser to erase back any of those construction lines that are not needed when you're sort of finished. So first of all, I've already sort of set it up, and you can see that you need to go through and draw a horizon line, roughly about, in this case, 2/3 of the way up the page. In future drawings, the horizon line can really be anywhere. Obviously, the further it is up the page, more of the ground you're going to be seeing. The further it's set down the page, more of the sky you're going to be seeing. Once you've drawn the horizon line, and just make sure that the horizon line is right angled to the paper. On that horizon line, place a dot, and that's going to be the vanishing point. This one's obviously set roughly about 1/4 of the way in, just a little bit under. And also draw the first post. Okay, it's roughly 120 mil high, so 12 centimeters high. This post that I've drawn here is going to be this first post. The post needs to be vertical, and the post in this case should cross over the horizon line. But this method of drawing receding objects in perspective works both if it was below or above, and it works both in 1- and 2-point perspective. For this drawing, it's purely just going to be a 1-point perspective view, and then focusing on that receding forms. The next thing we need to do is draw the perspective lines. Now they're going to be a line from the bottom of the post and the top of the light post, back to that vanishing point. Obviously to depict that, that depth plane. Along the horizon line, now determine where the second post is going to be. So post number 1, now we need to work out where post number 2 is. This is just a visual, okay? So visually, I think the second post should be approximately about there. So I'm going to draw, making sure it's nice and straight, post number 2. I'll round off the top and the bottom. So we've got post number 1, we've got post number 2. Now we need to work out where post number 3 is. And that's where this method comes into play. Now what we need to do is make a marker halfway down the first post. So it's 125 mil long, so it's 62 and a half. I need to make a mark there. And I'm drawing that midpoint line back to the vanishing point. Hoping they're straight. About 62 and a half. About 62 and a half. Perfect. Now to determine where post number 3 is, all we need to do is draw a line from the bottom of post number 2, intersecting on the line where halfway between, from post number 1 through post number 2, wherever that line projects onto that top line along the top of the perspective line, that's where post number 3 is. So it's going to start there. And now I can draw post number 3. And we can see that that's visually looking correct in terms of the spacing with perspective in play. Continue for post number 4. So the bottom of post number 2 through the center of post number 3 to determine where post number 4 is. That's going to be located there. I will shortly pause the video and continue out. So for 8 posts, I have gone through and completed the 8 light posts run along the pier. I've also now just determined the pier is going to be obviously that length there, so this is going to be the 1 point perspective horizontally sort of set ground plane. This next portion I want to determine the board thicknesses, or the board, widths that extend back. So we'll go through and do that. Drawing this can be completed in terms of receding forms in perspective. It's can be completed 1 point perspective or 2 point perspective. Just 2 point perspective, you won't have these horizontal lines. They'll be receding back to a vanishing point along this horizontal line. Might be extension of the page. You can see I've drawn the first board, completing the same process as the last technique in terms of determining the first board, dividing this first board in half to get that perspective line plane, to then determine where the second and third, so on and so forth, boards are. Now with this, you want to make sure you're projecting to the correct angle. Now determine that's a little bit of a, try both methods to work out which one's going to be the best. Because what I've worked out, if I go from this point on the first board through the center point to extend out along that perspective line, I'll do these as dashes. That's going to extend to there. Might just zoom in so it's a little bit more obvious. If I go the other direction, which should be the correct direction, we end up at different thickness boards. So if I drew the first board, the second board, that would be extending to there. If I drew it from the other direction, it would only be extending to there, which I believe this second one, or the closer one, is the correct view. So make sure you're just projecting out to the correct depth. So I'll keep that second one. And proceed. So we want to make sure we're going to the center point and going along, proceeding out to that right hand side rather than the left hand side. I'll continue to proceed, and I'm going to determine the thickness of the boards here. Also will draw some piers for the next video receding down, but it's, you know, completing the same process. Thank you. You can see we're now complete. I've just gone through with the 0.4 fine liner and add all the detail, add a little bit of texture, sides of the boardwalks, a little bit of a waterfront or the jetty, and place all the details in. Then just gone through and used an eraser. Make sure the eraser's clean so there's no smudges, and yeah, raised it back so it's all nice and clean. Got rid of all those construction lines. So there we have it. Thank you.